Hey, what's up, guys? This is Anthony James, host of the Grindhouse Podcast. Today on our Chop It Up Wednesdays, I have Dustin Carter. And you can see the Big Ten on his chest. He is a Big Ten replay official. So, like we told you guys, we're going to look at all sports, walks of life of sports, and we want to connect it and make sure that the fan experience, make sure that they understand, hey, what goes on, not just what we see on TV, but behind the scenes. So, Dustin, thank you for jumping in and talking with us today, man.
Hey, Anthony, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I honestly had not heard any prior podcasts, but when you reached out and was able to invite me to this incredible event, I went out and listened to all the cast that you had done prior, and this is a pretty awesome show. So really appreciate you having me here this evening.
I appreciate it, man. Listen, we're with us. We're just trying to do a little bit different. I know everybody has a little sports podcast and things like that. We wanted to just talk about the what we like. You know, and I think that's number one. Finding out what you like. Me being a Big Ten guy, my co-host being a Big Ten guy. We're like, hey, where else can we find some other Big Ten guys? And we got a Big Ten guy officially here. So
That's awesome. Happy to be here, and always love the opportunity to talk about sports and especially football. The Big Ten obviously is an incredible organization and an incredible conference, right? As you think about the competition that conference has, it's incredible to be part of it. And so, looking forward to where the conversation goes today. And thanks again for having me.
Appreciate it. So obviously Big Ten guy. You grew up in Big Ten country?
Yeah, right here in Central Illinois, Anthony, and born and raised. Actually grew up. Half of my childhood spent over in Hoopeston, Illinois, and you sports fans might be familiar with Hoopeston because they have the mascot of the Corn Jerkers, and so you might remember David Letterman had a top 10 list of the most strange school mascots.
Yeah.
And the Hoopeston Corn Jerkers made that list. So I grew up as a corn jerker half of my childhood. And then
I'm sorry to laugh.
The other half actually graduated from Leroy High School, just about 30 minutes west of Champaign, Urbana, home of University of Illinois. And so, right here in the middle of Big Ten country. And so grew up obviously watching a lot of Illinois football and a lot of Illinois basketball. Also loved baseball, and I umpired college baseball for 23 years. So it was it's a great place to be a sports fan right here in the Midwest.
Right. So who are some of those? Obviously, growing up, you're University of Illinois. I'm going to presume growing up, you were an Illinois fan growing up.
You know, my household, my mom, my dad, were Illinois fans. Dad was a faithful Chicago Bears fan, right? And so I don't know that we were necessarily one of those households that knew the names of every player on every roster, but there was always some sporting event on the TV. And when there were times where we were lucky enough to be able to go to a game, and that was such an awesome experience. It actually fueled my interest in sports, right? Growing up and either watching that on TV or going to a game with dad. That was an incredible experience and something that probably sparked, right, my interest in learning more about the sport. And I was never an athlete, right? That was charmed with any kind of athletic talent. And so I wanted to be part of the game. I knew I wanted to be part of the game. But officiating, thankfully, was an avenue for me to pursue, to be part of this incredible avocation, this incredible hobby that a lot of people often ask why.
We're definitely going to get to why. That why is going to come. I grew up in the Midwest as well. I grew up in Michigan. I have a Michigan State sweatshirt on. So I attended Central Michigan University though. So it was one of those things of Big Ten sports. I tell people all the time, like I can kind of lean when it comes to Big Ten football and things like that, but I'm never leaning against Tom Izzo. it just is what it is. When it comes to
Absolutely.
basketball, so grew up big time football fan, but Big Ten basketball is just as big, if sometimes bigger in certain years. Kind of in those early 2000s, I kind of remember Big Ten basketball a little bit more than I do Big Ten football, and that's probably because of my, I grew up in Flint, Michigan, so
Okay.
so my allegiance is to the Flintstones and things like that. It's just just what some of
Absolutely.
my fondest memories. So like, what was some of the inspiration beside to for the career in officiating? I know we just said kind of was a hobby, and like we were talking about being an athlete or being a part of the game, but what inspired to say, hey, you know what, I want to do this.
Yeah. So it dates back to, I was actually in junior high, going, I think eighth grade, going into my freshman year in high school. And, that was the time where, like many people, we were trying to figure out how to earn some extra money, right? Mom and
Yeah.
dad were putting a little pressure on to maybe think about getting a summer job. And my high school principal at the time at Leroy High School, his name was Mike Company, Mr. Company, and he was responsible for hiring all of the summer league umpires, baseball and softball umpires,
Mhm.
right, for the Leroy Summer League. And he said, "Hey," and at the time I was doing, like, I was helping keep the scorebook, right, for the junior high and high school baseball teams, and I was doing the same for basketball, and was a statistician for football. And he's like, "Hey, you're a sports guy. How would you like to come out and umpire baseball this summer?" I thought, well, that sounds a lot better than flipping burgers, right? And
Mhm.
so I said, okay, well, yeah, I don't know anything about it. And so he took me under his wing, and I'll tell you, Anthony, that was where it all started, right? It was me walking out at that time on a baseball diamond,
Mhm.
not not really knowing a lot what I was supposed to do,
Yeah.
and learning from more experienced umpires and officials. And I got to meet a lot of experienced umpires and officials, basketball officials, football officials. And what's really cool about officiating is it's it's a really tight group of people that want to help each other, right? They want to help each other be successful. And so
Mhm.
it's the one of the few avocations on the planet where they expect you to be perfect and
Yeah.
then improve from there.
Like, I don't know how
Right.
you improve from perfect, but we're
Yeah.
at
And
perfect.
so if you think about it, as a sports fan or as somebody watching the game, you expect the officiating to be perfect, right? That's your base expectation.
Mhm.
And so it requires a strong support system of people around you to build you up and help you with rules knowledge and help you with mechanics or positioning. We use the word mechanics as a word to classify where to be on a certain play, or mechanically how you adjust to call a game.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm blessed to have an incredible support system, people that have advanced into their officiating career at the professional level.
Mhm.
And those people have been part of my life ever since I was in junior high, right? And so
Sure.
it started there and evolved. I did baseball for a couple years, and then somebody said, "Hey, how would you like to do some junior football league (JFL) football games on Saturday morning?"
Mhm.
I said, "Okay, that sounds interesting, right?" I was around the game a lot, right? I was helping out, whether it was being the water boy for the football team or
Mhm.
helping the coaches with stats. So I picked up some rule books and I started to really get in the rule book and study the rules. And then next thing you knew, my high school coaches were coming to me asking me like, "Hey, Dustin, what's the rule on this?" Right? We're
Mhm.
going to try to kind of come up with a game situation, but we don't want to break the rule.
Yeah.
So kind of became the rules guy, right, on the team. And that really just led to a lot of future opportunities that I never dreamed would come true. But
Mhm.
yeah, started back in junior high with Mr. Company convincing me to
That's
go out and umpire Little League baseball.
that's awesome. I know this is, and this is probably, I know we talked a little bit about a few things. We talked. Is there any rules that a fan will find weird? that that is an actual rule in football? You're like, you know what, that actually is a rule. Like, I
Yeah.
had one, and I'm going to ask you this question. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I was we were on a recruiting visit, and we were talking about long field goals and talking about if someone was to stand inbounds and jump and catch the ball and throw it back over the goalpost, would that count as a block? I don't know. so so
It's a great question, and you know what's beautiful about that question is it's the types of questions that officials
Mhm,
often think about or talk about, right? You
mhm.
know, these what if scenarios. Because if
Yeah.
you think about it, it's easy to get the ones that are obvious, right?
Yes.
And the ones that stand out.
Mhm.
Where I think great officials separate themselves from good officials or
Mhm.
maybe competent officials, right? To become a great official,
Mhm.
you have to be in that mode where when something happens strange and peculiar, like what you were
Yeah.
asking about, you have to be prepared to understand, okay, I know I read that rule. It's on page 67, right? It's section 4, article 2, right? Paragraph 3. And you have to be the one person that potentially is on the crew that comes in and says, hey, I know this rule. I just read this, or I was just talking to somebody about this, and then here's the rule. And to be the official that comes in and gets it right, I
Yes.
mean, that not only earns the respect of the coaches and the players, but it also earns the respect of the fans, right? To know
Yes.
that there's a professional or a set of professionals that have dedicated so much time to their craft
Yes.
that they can come in and really get the call right during really difficult situations.
Yeah.
And so we put a lot of time, Anthony, into rules testing and rules knowledge.
Mhm.
Um, in the Big Ten, I mean, we take weekly quizzes, rules tests.
Mhm.
We're tested on a regular basis at our clinics. Um, our supervisor, Bill Carollo, fantastic supervisor, a well-respected one throughout the country, has very high expectations for rules knowledge. Right? He doesn't care whether you're the replay official or the back judge or the umpire or the center judge. Everybody on his staff needs to know the rules,
Yes.
and so I think the fans expect that the game deserves it,
Mhm.
and so yeah, we put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we understand and know the rules. There's some officials out there, Anthony, that are really good officials, but
Mhm.
maybe they're
They
not
don't know the
really good
rules.
rules people,
Mhm.
right? They know the game, like their football IQ is off the charts.
Mhm.
They're in good physical condition, they hustle, but then when some quirky situation happens,
Mhm.
they may not be the person that knows exactly, but there needs to be somebody on the crew,
Yeah.
right?
And that
If
was
not
actually
multiple people.
and that was one of the things, like, again, one of the things I was thinking about that I probably didn't talk about before, is that, like, putting together a crew, like, of I mean, because that kind of what you're saying there, where you have guys who have essentially, I kind of look at it as it's essentially like a high school where you got your jocks, you got your nerds, you got everybody, who come together to make sure to make the school great. So is that essentially what happened when you put together a good crew, or you got to have guys who are, I can get through this. I'm in the game. I'm focused on each play. I'm looking at here. Then you got somebody like, I just know all of the rules. My
Yeah,
replay officials up in the booth, they understand these things. Is that how
yeah,
you guys kind of put together a good crew, or just like
yeah.
a mismatch of people?
I'll tell you this: our supervisors, I, although they never disclose maybe the art of how they go about putting together a crew. It's
Mhm.
pretty obvious to me from my experience, especially at the FBS Division 1 level, that there is very intentionality. There's a significant intentionality that goes into making sure that when they put together crews,
Mhm.
that just like you said, that so for example, your wing officials, your short wing, your line judge, your headline judge, right? Those officials are going to interact with the coaches the most, right?
Mhm.
And so you obviously want to put officials who are really good relationship focused people on the
Yes.
wings, right? People that can answer the questions to the coaches. They can get them information that they need quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that they're going to represent the entire crew, because that's the official that coach is going to interact with the most, right? Just
Yeah.
based on proximity.
Yes.
The back judge, right? The back judge has a lot of responsibilities in the backfield, especially on the passing game or on the kicking game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so somebody that understands the nuances associated with pass interference or kick catching interference, right? Or all of the rules that are focused on the kicking game or the passing game. And you also want those officials that are deep to
Yeah.
be the ones that can run really fast, right? I mean, these college
Yeah,
athletes are getting bigger and
yeah,
stronger.
got to keep up with, you need a referee that can at least run a 4.7.
That's right. Yeah, and so really important for those deep officials to be focused on those rules, and to also be focused athletically on making sure they get themselves in a position
Yes.
to be able to rule on it. So yeah, a lot of intentionality around dynamics of personality, dynamics of strengths.
Excuse me.
They have to know our blind spots,
Yes.
right? And yeah, I think there's a lot of intentionality at the supervisor level when it comes to putting a crew together.
Hi, I'm Shane with Restore Hyper Wellness right here in Murphy, Texas. I'm proud to say we're partners with Grindhouse Sports Training just next door in Wiley. Now, Coach Washington over at Grindhouse Sports Training has done a phenomenal job at not just building out a business in the community, being a pillar in the community, but also being an inspiration to the young, talented kids that he trains each and every day. Now, last year, Coach Washington started a podcast, a Grindhouse podcast. The links are below. I encourage each and every one of you to go check this out, listen to it, like it, enjoy it. Coach Washington will walk you through his personal experiences, what motivates him, what made him what he is today, and why he's so effective at being a phenomenal leader to these young, talented individuals. Check out the podcast. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. And I know that we've talked about the crew, and I want to make sure that I get into what you do as a replay official. So like, as far as like, obviously we talked about the crew and make sure it's intentional. We talked about the training, but the technology that you guys have, like how much, like when, I guess starting from, looking at how far replays kind of come, where you got your yellow lines, your pylon cameras, to your sky cameras, and you still can miss it, and they don't have enough cameras still, when you look at trying to get every play correct and things like that. But can you kind of give us a little bit about the technology and tools that you use kind of during the game?
Sure. Yeah. So we are heavily dependent in replay on whatever production company, right,
Mm-hmm.
is covering the game, right? Because we're seeing the game through their eyes, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the talented technicians that are operating the cameras, to the producer, the assistant producer, everyone that's managing the broadcast of the game, the replay booth is heavily dependent on, right? Without them, we wouldn't be able to replay anything, right? Because we wouldn't have the shots. And so every stadium has a fairly consistent setup. The camera placements might be different depending on where you go,
Mm-hmm.
but all of those feeds, those camera feeds, are coming into the replay booth, and we work with some very specific software that allows us to capture those feeds, those camera feeds.
Mm-hmm.
And then when those are captured through the software that we use, we have the ability then to manipulate the speed or the zoom or which cameras we want to look at. But we are dependent on the production actually capturing those. So, for
Okay.
example, on TV, you're looking at what we call the program feed, right? It's what is
Yeah.
being shown on
Wide
TV,
shot. Yep. Yep.
right? That may or may not be the best shot that we need in order to be able to determine, one, are we going to stop this game and take a
Mm-hmm.
look at it? Or it may not be the best shot in order for us to make a decision with indisputable video evidence. And I'm
Right.
sure we'll get to that in just a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
But so that software, we have a replay technician that is assigned to every game, and their job is to capture all of the video coming in through the production feed, and they're able to tell us, hey, replay coming on A, And we have the ability to touch our monitor. It's all a touch screen, and we can go right to camera A, and it'll show us whatever camera A had.
Right.
But we have a screen initially that shows us all of the camera angles, right? And sometimes this can be 15, 18, 20 different feeds, right? Or it could be as few as 5 or 6, depending on
where you are,
the game that you're working. But usually at the FBS, especially in the Big Ten, you have quite a number of feeds coming in. And so part of the job of the replay official, Anthony, is if we know that there's really only 2 camera angles that are going to help us make a decision, then let's quickly look at those camera angles, find if there's any reviewable aspects, and then make a decision on whether we're going to stop the game or not, right? Some of that we're stopping based on rule, but there's situations where the replay official has judgment as to whether or not they're going to stop the game. So that's kind of just a little sneak peek, but a lot of it is all of those production feeds coming into the booth, and then us using some specialized software to help us manage what we're going to be looking at.
That makes sense. So, and kind of you just kind of brought up like one of the questions about, conclusive evidence. So like, how do you handle a situation where video evidence isn't conclusive, where like, you're like, okay, I this is what I see, but I don't know if this is, because again, you're essentially at the end of the day, between you and the referee are going to be making a decision that, hey, this is what we both see, and this is kind of what we're going with. And I'm guessing that's how that works. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that's kind of how it works. You guys work in tandem to see, hey, this is what I see. This is what you see. Here's the camera angle that I see the best. And you're kind of showing that on the screen that he's looking at on the field. Am I off in any way there?
No, you're not off at all. The referee, the crew chief, is looking at a play with us. So in the Big Ten, remember, you have a replay official that's assigned to the crew, right? And they're traveling with that crew to all of the sites.
Yes.
But also you have a collaborative centralized replay center that is based in Big Ten headquarters in Rosemont, Illinois. And you have a collaborative replay official. You have a replay supervisor, a replay center supervisor that is also in the process to make sure that we're getting the call right. That's super important to us, right?
Yeah.
Very important for us if we're going to use this really powerful technology and the investments that have been made to use replay. The last thing we want to do is get the call wrong, right? When it's clear.
That's not what you want to do.
That's right. So everybody has a vested interest to get the call right. And so the replay official, the collaborative replay official, and the referee all working together. And we have lanes that we stay in to make sure that we're not talking on each other, over each other. But together, we try to make the right decision using rules knowledge. And obviously, Anthony, you and the fans of the game know that there are some situations that are very gray. Right. That aren't just black and white rule based. That targeting, for example, right?
It is that's gonna, I think, defer forever for the rest of time. Targeting is going to be one of those weird things. I mean, we've seen it in the Texas games. I know you guys didn't have to work those games, but we've seen it in those games where it's like, oh, they didn't call targeting on things like that. So we know targeting is just going to be one of those weird things that just I don't want to say it's perception. But it's it's to me it feels more perception. But we don't have to talk about that. I'm just saying from a fan standpoint.
It's you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a process that we work through, right? Especially when you think about targeting, right? There's a set of rule requirements that we have to work through, and we are trained to be very methodical in the process that we use to first determine, have the conditions of targeting been met? And depending on whether or not we consider the player defenseless or not, right? If you hear the words indicators, right? What were the indicators that allowed us to even think about whether or not a targeting foul has occurred? But it's one foul that replay can't stand on, right? We can't say ruling on the field stands. We either have to confirm the ruling on the field, if there was whatever that ruling was, whether it was no targeting at all, or maybe it was targeting, or we have to overturn it. We can't stand on
Yeah.
a targeting call.
Yeah.
And as you know, and the fan base knows, boy, there are some really just gray scenarios.
Yeah.
And we try to calibrate as a replay staff, at least in our conference. When we go to clinics, we calibrate with other conferences.
Hmm.
College football is trying to get to a point where we're trying to be consistent, but
Yeah.
it's a game played, coached, and officiated and replayed by human beings.
Yes.
And
I,
so there's always going to be a gray zone, right? And that's what allows the game to be so great, in my opinion, is
because you still have to play the game. You still have
that's right.
it still have to be the. I think to me, targeting is actually probably not the hardest call. I think it's on the hits on the quarterback sometimes are kind of the hardest ones where, and I know
Sure.
that's not usually aren't replay reviewable and things like that. So that's why I'm kind of bringing those up because those aren't really reviewable, especially like in the NFL when you're looking at the low hits on quarterbacks and things like that where you got guys who are kind of going full speed and you can't hit them up high, can't hit it up low. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm within a step and I'm taking a shot, and it's those to me are the hardest calls I think for a lot of those officials. So
Yeah, and there's I'm sure you're aware there was a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism, right?
Mhm.
Especially at the National Football League level, where I mean, quarterbacks are a very important asset to a team,
Yes,
right? And so, from an officiating perspective, obviously, we're going to make sure that that player is protected based on what the rule says,
yes,
right? And sometimes the difference between the way an official looks at a game and the way a fan looks at the game is
hmm,
the official is coming in with no bias, right?
yes,
We don't care who wins that game. We're we're the guardian of the game, right?
yeah,
Our job is to make sure it's played fairly, correctly,
yeah,
and hopefully safely, right? I know
mm-hmm.
it's football, it's a full contact sport, but we don't want anybody to walk away from a game, no matter how important it is or how much is on the line. We
Hmm.
want everybody to walk away healthy.
Yes,
And sometimes that means the officials have to make some really tough decisions, right? Especially when you think about roughing the passer
hmm,
or things that involve just unnecessary contact, right? And some of that's just judgment of the official.
yeah. And I know that, like I said, I plan on this being like a 30-minute conversation.
Ah,
We're almost there. It's like, man, I got stuff I still want to ask. I'm gonna ask a few more things if you still got a couple, a few more minutes.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so when it comes to recent some of the rule changes that we've had, recently in football, have those kind of impacted how your role as a replay official?
Yeah, so rules changes are really important for the replay staff, right?
Mhm.
So especially when it comes to timing, right? All the changes that were in play here in the last 2 years regarding timing elements and when replay is able to get involved and maybe correct timing situations. Um, I would say not just rule changes, Anthony, but philosophy changes, right? As
Mhm.
college football across the country tries to become more standardized and consistent,
Mhm.
right? Super important for us to be, as a new rule is introduced. As you might imagine, there's a lot of those what if scenarios that come to play, and
Yeah.
sometimes the rules committee, while I know they have good intentions when they intentionally put in a new rule, they probably don't think about all of the different scenarios until some of those scenarios play out. And that's
Mhm.
why sometimes in the middle of the season, we'll get clarifications, right? Hey, this was the rule change, but if this situation happens, this is how we're interpreting it, right? And so that not only goes out to the officials, but it goes out to the coaches, it goes out to the media. So hopefully everybody sees that there's transparency around that. But replay officials, I consider us the last line of defense, right? I mean, unless it's just not reviewable. There's just some things that aren't
Yeah.
reviewable. But if we're about to misapply a rule,
Mhm.
there is opportunities for us as a replay official, because remember, we have communication to the field. We can
Mhm.
talk to them using a communication device called O2O, or
Okay.
official to official, which is an encrypted communication network that allows the replay staff, collaborative replay, and the field officials to be able to communicate with each other.
Mhm.
And so we are able to give them information that hopefully ultimately gets things right. Now we're not giving them information about a judgment call, right?
Right.
That's theirs to make. But if it's something about a rule,
Mm-hmm.
we're there to make sure the rule is applied correctly, along with, of course, all the officials on the field, who, by the
Yeah.
way, are super talented and have earned their spots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely rule changes are super important for us.
Right. And obviously, like I said, I think that as from a fan perspective, we never understand we'll hear the rules that are changed, but we don't always understand exactly how they affect the game and things like that. But for your own self, when it comes to some of these rules and some of the things that kind of go on in your day-to-day preparation, do you have like a preparation, that how you prepare for a game, either leading up into it or just a day of, or do you,
Yeah.
I know you probably can't tell us, okay, do you know when you're going to be assigned? I'm essentially, you probably have a
Yeah.
schedule, that kind of goes through like, hey, I'll be
Yeah.
assigned here, things like that. But
Yeah, the conference doesn't give us the entire schedule
Mhm.
for the entire season, right? We get a certain number of games up front, and then
Mhm.
they'll give us games as the season goes on, and that's just to protect overall
Yeah.
integrity of the assigning process.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I'll just real quickly kind of go through our regimen and what our schedule looks like. I think some people think we just show up, an hour before game day or
Mhm.
game time and go out there and officiate the game. But
Mhm.
it's literally an all week process. So from the moment that we're done with our prior game, Sunday, we are putting in reports, right? We are reviewing all the game film. We're going through every play that happened in the game. We're documenting opportunities for us to be better. We're documenting fouls that are called
Mhm.
and what we saw and what rule we're using to justify what, or maybe admitting that you know what, that was questionable. So we're doing that during the week. There's crew conference calls, there's position conference calls that every official is required to participate in.
Mhm.
So for replay staff, we're having regularly scheduled conference calls where they are showing us plays from all over the country to try to calibrate and get everybody on the same page.
Mhm.
Um, Typically, as we near the end of the week, the crew is talking about finalizing logistics. We're making sure that everybody is familiar with each other's travel plans.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Carpooling when appropriate. Maybe we're intersecting on a flight together, and
Right.
we're meeting
Because
up.
you're coast to coast now. You're New
That's right.
York to Los Angeles now. So
Yeah, yeah. And then Friday, a day before the game, assuming the game was on Saturday, we're getting together on Friday. We're usually required to be there the day before.
Mhm.
Some officials get there 2 days before just because they don't want to deal with any weather
Yeah.
conditions that might be occurring depending on where they're living. We
Mhm.
usually have a meal together as a crew on Friday, and then we pregame. And our pregames are sometimes a couple hours long, where we're going over film. We're watching film from both teams that we've got. We're looking at questions that were submitted by the coaches,
Mhm.
plays that they've submitted that they want us to just take a closer look at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Saturday morning, we're up, we're eating breakfast. Some guys get a workout in, and we're off to the stadium several hours before kickoff,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
lots of stuff that happens before the game. So this is literally, it almost feels like sometimes a
Like
full-time
you're getting
job.
ready to play.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
But a ton of preparation that goes
Yeah.
into it, and a lot of commitment from us to make sure that we're protecting the integrity of the game, and we're going to give 100% out there in
Yeah.
our respective positions.
Sounds good. I got two more questions I want to ask before I let you go. First, and I kind of this is kind of just brought this up a little bit here, so I apologize. So, with expansion, with how has that affected your as being an official? Because again,
Yeah,
you can have one week that you are at Rutgers, the next week that you're probably at UCLA. Like,
yeah,
how has that affected? And do you feel like, and to be honest, because there's a human element to it, do you feel like
sure.
some of that fatigue, even though we always talk about the players, do you feel like some of that flight and that fatigue affects some officials as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's I think the assigners, the supervisors do a really nice job of trying to be a little conscious of, when they assign the crews,
Mm-hmm.
trying to be a little bit aware of maybe, preventing that fatigue. But yeah, not uncommon for us to be at UCLA and then turn around and we're at Maryland, right, the
Mm-hmm.
following week. And so I would say one of the ways that I personally deal with it is I first of all, I try to make sure I prioritize rest and
Yes.
downtime, right? I try to make sure I've got a really healthy work life balance. Um, I try to be proactive, right, when it comes to keeping myself as healthy as I can, right? My immune system as healthy as
Yes.
it can,
Mm-hmm.
and taking advantage of downtime when I have it, right? I think a lot of times that when people get burned out, it's because they're just going 100-mile an hour, right? And this is true for the coaches. This is true for the players. Heck, sometimes even the fans, right?
Yes.
And so I think the officials have a very similar, consistent discipline, right? We try to
Mm-hmm.
be routine, but yet focus on our health. We try to be there for each other, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's been a rough week, because we all have lives and families and jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to pick each other up when we're down, just like a team would do, because we consider ourselves, the third team on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not competing,
Yes. Yes.
but
Yes. We
we're
definitely
there
want.
to make sure the game is played right. So a lot of camaraderie and brother and sisterhood
Mm-hmm.
is among our staff to make sure that we're there for each other and that we keep each other going.
All right. Last question. So the sense of with the Big Ten culture, because I just want to talk the Big Ten for a minute, because again,
Yeah.
we all growing up, you grew up in Illinois, I grew up in Michigan, that sense of pride when our of watching the football games, seeing the Ohio State games and Michigan games in the '90s, and seeing all these teams, seeing the upsets and stuff like that. Like my partner, he played at the University of Illinois when they won the Big Ten championship. So I was
Awesome.
going to ask about how the uniqueness of officiating in the Big Ten, but tell me about just from a personal level, the sense of pride of being a Big Ten
Yeah.
official. Like, tell me about that for you.
Yeah. Anthony, I'll be honest. I mean, I still pinch myself sometimes hoping that it's not a big dream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never dreamed, like I can remember like it was yesterday walking out on a high school football or even a JFL game on a Saturday morning, right? Getting yelled at by every mom in the stands. And I never dreamed that, one day I would be walking in the Ohio State University stadium, or Oregon or Michigan or Iowa or Rutgers. I mean, there's just the Big Ten. I'm a little biased when I say this, but I mean, it is a phenomenal conference,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's ultra competitive. It's created a foundation that I think is just, I find myself being, taking a lot of pride in knowing that I have an opportunity that a lot of people wish they had. And quite honestly, Anthony, a lot of people are deserving to have.
Yes.
Um, our supervisor likes to remind us that it's really hard to get into the Big Ten as an official, but it's even harder to stay in as an
Yeah.
official in the Big Ten, because every year, every game, our jobs are on the line. And that's
Right.
because if he senses that we're not giving 100% and we're not fully dedicated to this avocation, this craft that we're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
he's got a lot of people waiting that are super disciplined, that are super ready to step up to the plate and do it. And so it's an incredible experience for me. I am so grateful to be able to have that experience. I don't take it for granted. Um, I go into every game knowing that this is going to be my focus. I'm going to give 100%. I may not be perfect. And in the times that I'm not perfect, I'm going to admit when I'm not perfect. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to try to learn from those moments and not make the same mistake twice.
Yes.
Hopefully everybody, right? Humans
Yeah. There's a
think like
human
that,
element. That's the
right?
part there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But to answer your question directly, it's such an incredible opportunity. When I found out that I was going to be on staff for the Big Ten, I remember the day, the hour, the minute, the second very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my parents are no longer with us, but for me, it was the first thing I thought is, damn, I really wish my mom and dad were here, right, to be
Mm-hmm.
part of this, because they were big supporters for me growing up, right?
Yes.
I don't think any parent, as their child's going through junior high and high school, thinks, oh, my son or daughter is an official, right? They maybe think, oh, my son or daughter is going to be an athlete, right? They don't think about them pursuing officiating. And so they were huge fans of mine. They supported me. I remember my dad driving me to games to officiate that before I even had a driver's license, getting up early in the morning to drive me clear across the state. And so, yeah, it's a lot of pride for me to be part of this. And it's not something that I take lightly. I take it very seriously, and it's an incredible opportunity.
Well, listen, from a fan standpoint, from a dad standpoint, from someone who have lived and breathed football, not as an athlete, but as a trainer, as I always want to make sure that everyone who's a part of the game and our kids who are athletes now know that being an athlete not the only way that you can be part of the game. There's so many things that you can do, from coaching to training to what you're doing as a replay official, to that the game needs people, and they need new blood too. They need new people
Right.
who are interested in this and things like that as well. So
That's right.
I
Yeah.
know I thank you for what you guys do in the preparation and wanting to always get it right. So
Yeah, appreciate that, Anthony. And you hit it right on the head. I think the game needs all different kinds of people and backgrounds and strengths and skill sets. And if everybody comes committed to try to protect the integrity and be a guardian of the game, whether you're playing it, coaching it, watching it, whatever.
yes.
My dad always used to say, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And so I always kind of keep that in the back of my mind is, my job is to try to get it right, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it right. So yeah, that what you just said really resonates with me.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna leave it on the words of your dad. If it's worth doing, then it's worth doing it right. So I appreciate for you coming in on our Chop It Up Wednesdays. I'm sure that we'll cross paths again at some point. I know that we kind of talked to you about some things in the future, so we'll go through those things once we'll talk offline about some future things and things like that as well. But I appreciate you, Dustin, for coming in and chopping it up with me on this Wednesday, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a great time. Appreciate it very
All right.
much.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.